All right, our next presentation is going to be opportunities with medical device companies. And we're very pleased to have Dr. Juan Daca as our presenter. Dr. Daca has over 10 years experience in the medical device industry, including medical safety officer, global orthopedics, joint reconstruction for J&J, Johnson & Johnson, and currently is a vice president, global product safety for Mertz Aesthetics. Dr. Daca is an orthopedic surgeon with fellowships on both total knee and hip replacements and prosthetic joint infection management. He received his MD at Pontificia Universidad Javeriana in Colombia, which I butchered, pretty close, I'm getting a thumbs up, and completed his fellowships at Universidad de Barcelona in Spain. Dr. Daca is a certified personal executive health coach and a fantastic speaker, a real evangelist for non-clinical careers for physicians. It's a thrill to have him back here. Please welcome Dr. Juan Daca.
Thank you, James. First of all, I do want to thank this opportunity. And for those of you listening, I hope you enjoy this. As you can see in the screen, that's my QR code for LinkedIn. I am very active on LinkedIn. That's like my personal assistant. So if you ever want to reach out, please make sure you scan that code and we can keep in touch. This is now the third time that I've given this presentation, and I hope it is as entertaining for you to listen as it is for me to give it to you guys. So I'm really, really happy and thankful for this opportunity. Thank you, James. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you to all the SEEK community. So we are going to be talking about the opportunities for clinicians to do the swap or the flip into corporate and specifically in the medical device world, because that's where I've been living in for the last 12 years of my life. So first of all, I have to throw in this disclaimer, and it's basically the same disclaimer as you're going to hear from everybody else. This is all a personal opinion and does not represent any of the views of my former company or my current company. So let's get that started. So this is my story. I want you to learn a little bit about me because I like to consider myself as very lucky and very fortunate to be where I am today. And if you had asked me 15, 20 years ago, as I was wearing scrubs, first year residency, if I thought that I was going to be where I am now, the answer would be resounding heck no. So it does move around. Your life does move around, and my life has moved around in so many places that you need to understand where I'm coming from in order to get the idea of how things can fall into place without you even wanting them, but seeking and seizing that opportunity is where you're going to be decisive in your career. So I'm originally from Colombia, and as you see there, it's Colombia with an O, not with a U. I graduated in 1992, and I got drafted to the Army. I did 8 months in the Sinai Peninsula and 4 months in Bogota. And then I started in the University of Georgia, go Dogs, as a pre-med. And because I was out of state and out of country, it was going to be very long and expensive for me to pursue my medical career within the United States. So I went back to Colombia and I did my med school there in the Universidad Javeriana, as James was letting you know. I did orthopedics, then I did joint reconstruction, both in Colombia and Barcelona. And during that tenure, I wanted to be a little bit different and introduce coaching to the rehab of my patients. So that's where I started getting certified as a life executive and health coach. And it's not coaching to be healthy, like you're probably thinking. It's actually applying coaching strategy to the health industry. I did focus on emotional intelligence. And if you had asked me when I was a kid, what did I want to be when I grew up? I always had the same answer. I wanted to be a husband and I wanted to be a dad. And I am right now, husband and a dad to two amazing young girls. So I did the switch. And when I did the switch, it was unexpected. I like to call this, as you're going to probably see it down where the Lego piece fitting in a place where kind of in a Tetris fashion, space was available. I was contacted by my first company, and they were exactly needing for an orthopedic surgeon with joint reconstruction background to join their medical affairs program. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what that was. We're talking 2012 here. But I said, why not? Let's give it a try. And if nothing comes out of this, or if this doesn't work, I can always go back to my clinical practice that hadn't started yet. But it was kind of the right moment at the right time. So I jumped on that boat and I was hired, and I was transferred to Warsaw, Indiana, with my family in 2014. I started my tenure in medical affairs as being a medical affairs director. And then the company that I worked for initially opened up medical safety, which was completely independent from medical affairs and the commercial side of the business, which resonated with me because it made a lot of sense. Safety decisions have to be made from safety alone and not biased by any other thought process. So when I did that, it was very interesting because I started to understand the differences with my clinical life. And I will be honest with you, it was very hard and it was very difficult because the change was very, very um, abrupt. And I used to put my phone in mute and make sure that the camera was not on. And I would bang on the wall questioning, what have I done? What is this? What am I doing? This is not what I wanted. So I started to understand that in this corporate world, and maybe in many aspects of life, change is a constant. And the only constant thing is change. When you understand that, you're going to be able to define one of the biggest difference of your clinical world, in which you grow up and want to be that subject matter expert in what you do. And once you get good at it, you just want to stay there. In industry, it's completely different. It's being able and resilient and willing to go with all the changes that are going to happen. So that's one of the biggest things to understand. A lot of twists and turns. You start to understand where your medical industry know-how starts to develop, and you provide your medical input to the corporate world. You understand the regulations or the laws of the game, the rules of the game for your devices to actually go into the market. And you start defining your path, even though you're going to have people that are going to try to define it for you. This is where you're going to start to see, all right, where do I fit in? What can I get better at? What do I need in my curriculum to get good at what I'm doing now? So that's when I decided to become an auditor, not to audit, but because I have this art of war mentality. And if you haven't read the book Art of War, there's so many variations out there driving, how to think a bit about the art of war in business, in life. And really, the reason I became an auditor is to understand how auditors think so I could be ready with my team or with my company when auditors walked in the door. And it was the same thing that I did in rounds for my previous life as a joint reconstruction resident. It was, what will I be asked? So I kind of pre-asked myself all the different questions. So when I got to the rounds, maybe those questions that were asked were already in a way prepared. So this way of seeing things of the art of war is to understand how the enemy, open and close quotes, thinks. So you're ready and you're prepared. When you jump on this boat of changing your career, bring your ideas. You're going to find allies and you're going to find detractors always. Stay current, keep a growth mindset, keep learning. Don't ever stop thinking that you know everything, because you never will. There's always going to be something new. And when I joined my new company from Merce Aesthetics, it was more of an agnostic thought process, in a way of not having specific input of orthopedics anymore, but knowing about safety. And that is what I think got me to get this position, because my orthopedic knowledge was not needed anymore. It was more of my safety knowledge in medical devices. And I do want to leave you with this this phrase for this slide of my story. I actually thought it was Ted Lasso. Then I found out originally it was Walt Whitman, that said to be curious and not judgmental. Now, this is what we're going to cover we're going to get a little bit of a reality check. We're going to go through a brief overview of what medical devices are, the opportunities for MDs in medical devices. I'm going to be addressing some questions that I received before this presentation. We're going to talk about money because it's important. And again, this is now November 2024, and this is very recent. I'm going to tell you about the different doctors that joined corporate, a little bit of miscellaneous topics. I'm going to provide you some encouragement and some recommended actions. Now, this is a first of a reality check that's very recent. 60% of clinicians are spending more time in the emergency department than with patients. Something is happening to us as clinicians that is driving us to get sick. And according to the American Medical Association, the burnout, even though have decreased after the pandemic from 63 to 48.2, that is almost 50%. So just think about it. Half of the people you work with are experiencing some sort of burnout. And now that burnout has become a thing, I'm sure you're going to notice a lot of it in you and in most of your colleagues as well, at least 50%. Now, emergency medicine physicians experience the highest burnout rate of any medical specialty. And this is 65%. And if you scroll down that list on your bottom right, you're going to see that the levels are pretty high and pretty scary. Internal medicine, 60, pediatrics, 59, OBGYN and infectious diseases, 58, family medicine, 57, and then neurology, critical care, and anesthesiology, 55%. These are scary, scary numbers because these are the physicians that are going to treat you and your family. So if they're burned out, you start questioning, are they okay to treat me? And obviously, we as physicians will always come in with our A game, but sometimes we're human too. So that is also affecting our way of treating patients. And that has to be taken into account and something has to be done. Now, what is a medical device? And I'm not going to bore you with the logistics and the definitions of it, but here are some of the definitions that are critical because they have to mimic what the regulators consider as a medical device. So it is an instrument for medical purpose. There's also devices that can be used therapeutically, diagnostically, and interestingly enough, the regulations with something called the Annex 16 have some medical devices that are used with no clinical purpose. So for example, the fillers that my company provides are medical devices with no medical purpose, because if they had medical purpose, they wouldn't be aesthetic, they would be therapeutic. And there's a long list of those as well. The World Health Organization describes it as you see there. It's very technical, and it brings out the function of the device, like prevention, diagnosis, treatment, for detecting, measuring, restoring, correcting, or modifying, et cetera, et cetera. But then when you go down the route of what is a device for FDA, it goes down very technically with the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and defines it as an instrument, apparatus, implement, machine, contrivance, implant, in vitro reagent, or other similar. Very technical, very spot on. So it kind of falls out of a normal day-to-day definition of what a device is, and you'll be amazed of how many things that you use in practice are considered a device. Now, this is a key thing, and this is probably one of the things that are constantly changing, and that because of what I said a couple of slides ago, is so important to you to understand that you're going to get comfortable by understanding the regulations, and when you do, guess what? They're going to change. And they're going to bring in another thing that you were getting ready to be prepped on. And all of a sudden, whatever you were doing has to change to this. And you can fight it all you want, but these are the regulations. These are the regulatory bodies. These are the rules you have to undertake. And if you're coming from clinical practice in which you're basically, doing things with your own rules and your own practice, you're going to have to be understanding that right now, you're not going to be fully in command. You're going to have to be abiding by the new regulations. Now, how do you classify medical devices? Again, not going to bore you. You can see here in the screen, but basically the FDA classifies them into 3 classes: class 1, class 2, class 3, based on the risk. And with a stoplight kind of design, you can see from left to right, low risk, moderate risk, and high risk. So I've always been working with class 3 devices, which is orthopedic implants, and aesthetic fillers are also considered a class 3 devices. Then you have also medical devices categorized in the way that you see on the top right, which you have like some sort of pyramid, which are more of devices that you use on a day-to-day basis. And then you have also in vitro diagnostic medical devices, and so on and so forth. Now, what you see in the middle at the bottom is what is it that you need to actually get those devices in market. And you're going to start hearing a bunch of kind of a pre-market notification verbiage, 510K, IDE, and depending on the class, the regulators have a different perspective on what you have to bring to them in order for your device to be cleared to go into the market. And you as an MD, you're going to play a critical role in having those conversations with the regulators, in providing them, maybe from an MD to an MD, your rationale from a medical perspective on why this device should be in the market. Now, the device development process, I'm going to summarize it very, very, very gently because it is very complex. But basically what you do, and in these 5 steps that you see here, and sometimes it's 6 steps, is that you're going to have an idea, or your company is going to have an idea. Then that idea needs to be funded by your company, and that is when it gets chartered. Once it gets chartered, it'll go into the verification and validation process for you to understand, how am I going to test this? And based on the results, is my device going to be okay or not? And then you're going to start generating evidence. And when you generate evidence, that's when you bring in the clinical studies. That's when you do real world evidence, because all of this, the verification and validation testing and the evidence generated, is going to go to the regulatory team to provide to the regulator in order for the regulator to say yay or nay, your product can go out into the market. So those are basically the steps of how a device from ideation to launch go. And even though this was 30 seconds, this can take years in the making. You can see also here that there's another kind of more modern way of seeing it with a 6th phase, but basically is saying the same. What is introduced here, which is very important, is that usually the MDs are not only involved until the product is launched, but if you can see that 6th phase at the bottom, you start understanding that once the product is launched, you have post-market surveillance. And this is where your clinical expertise is going to help to determine signals, trends, and potential issues with your device that is going to have to come back to the rest of your team to determine if the device is okay to remain in the market. In this phase, you're also going to be scrutinized by auditors, or you're going to be scrutinized by your yearly provision of data to ensure that every year the data that you have allows your product to be safe and effective and continue to be in the market. Now, risk management and risk assessment has become one of my passions. That was one of the things that I determined was a gap in my knowledge, and I still believe that medical student curriculums should include this in some way or another, because this is so important. This is the meat and potatoes of what you or what I can provide as an MD within my company in medical devices. This is basically, in the majority of times, ran by engineers. So you're going to be having to have these conversations with engineers based on the ISO 14971 risk management process. And it's going to be a conversation of saying, all right, what can go wrong with our device? And if it goes wrong, what are the harms? And if these are the harms, what are the probability of those harms occurring? And then you're going to score those. And then you're going to come up with an Excel sheet that's going to have an initial score. Then you're going to ask yourself, how can we mitigate that? So this is when your experience in the field is going to be pristine and critical, because you're going to be having those conversations in order to reduce that immediate risk into a lower level of risk. And as you can see on the top left, you have this table that every person that works with risk management is aware of, in which you're going to score this and you're going to be providing this assessment of risk of your device. This is one of the things that I enjoy most about working with medical devices. So here we go. What are the opportunities for MDs? So there are many, as you probably have been hearing in other presentations, there are different sectors. So you have to define the sector that you want to get into. We're now talking about the device sector. It could also be pharma, consumer care, nutrition, cosmetics, or others, right? So define your area before applying. I frankly know and knew from the get-go that pharma was never my thing. It wasn't in med school. It has never been. So I was very fortunate and lucky to land as that Lego piece, Tetris style, in the exact place where I had done my clinical training in a moment in time where the device sector was actually looking for MDs that were trained in that specific area. So when you define your area before applying, you're going to have to better understand and see kind of the menu of options in where you want to join, or where can you provide your MD knowledge within that company. Or from an outsourced type of vendor perspective. So you can become a consultant, you can become an expert witness, and I know Seek provides with a lot of opportunities for you to learn more about this. You can land in medical affairs that has more of a joint type of perspective with the commercial side of the business, although you will be providing your medical knowledge within those key opinion leaders outside of your company. Then you could also land in medical or product safety like I did. And in the majority of companies, this area is under R&D, or it could be like in my first company, completely independent. You can learn how to, introduce medical writing. You can become a clinical study expert. You can even work for regulatory, risk assessment, telemedicine, senior management, become a chief medical officer. You can open up into startups that are dealing with AI and machine learning within the medical device industry. Or, you can also become a medical director in a hospital, which would entail a completely different line of training. Now, the questions that I got were many, and I thank you guys for sending those questions, but these were the more specific ones that I wanted to bring to this presentation. So what the different non-clinical jobs consist of on a day-to-day basis. The one thing I do when I answer this question is you're going to have a calendar, and your calendar is going to start getting filled with many things. You can be one day talking about risk assessment of one of your products. The next day, you're going to be in an escalation of a product that had a signal. Then the next day, you can have a meeting on post-market surveillance trending, or the next meeting, you're going to have a managerial type meeting to discuss issues with your team. And all of these can happen in a week, 2 weeks, or in the same day. But it is very, very nice to have different things to think about to just move out of that monotony of a day-to-day, because things will happen on the go. And remember, the only constant thing is change. What types of doctors are employers looking for? Well, it's getting more specific right now. So if your background is in OBGYN and you are interested in devices, you may want to look into a company that develops devices for OBGYN doctors. If you use scopes in your day-to-day, you might want to be looking into a company that does that. In my example, well, I was an orthopedic surgeon, and I fell, again, like the Lego piece, in a joint reconstruction hip and knee company. So right now it's getting more specific. So it may be that if you are a surgeon, you may not get an opportunity in pharma, but if you are an internal medicine doctor, that's probably pharma where you're going to be potentially having more opportunities. What skills are needed? Do you need more? You need the opportunity to get your foot in the door, and then you're going to develop more skills. But just being an MD and being proficient in what you do and are willing to learn and understand your handicap, that is what you need to bring into your interview, to let them know that you're willing to learn, that you don't know everything, that you're ready to be humbled down to a position of being sort of an intern again, and hit the ground running. Is it interesting, fun, rewarding, and challenging? Yes. There's no other answer to it. And you make great part of that. And would this field be a good fit for me? Well, there's only one way to find out. All right, let's talk about what a lot of people want to understand. Now, again, this is the third time I've been doing this. So this is actually going to bring you a comparison of last year and this year of how it has changed regarding compensation. The first thing that you want to understand is that you're going to get benefits in the majority of the companies that you join. That includes, your insurance, wellness. It is going to be a 9 to 5 job, technically. Very rarely you're going to work nights or weekends. So it's going to provide you with that sort of personal time or family time that you kind of don't have in your day to day if you're one of those practitioners that are on call or have to work weekends or nights. They're very rare urgencies. I laugh when I see an email that says urgent, and you open up the email and you have to review a document by tomorrow. So, I mean, it's one of those things that that really I'm glad that I had the opportunity to sacrifice. When I get asked if I miss my practice, the answer is yes. I miss the ER, really. I miss the trauma. I miss the thinking really quick. I miss that feeling of helping people and their families when you're in a vulnerable situation. Of course, I feel that, but got to put it in balance. And I don't miss working nights or weekends or that Sunday 6 p.m. shift. That I don't miss. You're going to get a salary. So usually every 2 weeks, there's going to be a paycheck. You're going to get, in the majority of times, a pension plan. You're going to get incentives like short-term or long-term, depending on the company. Some companies, depending on the level you enter, going to give you a company car and they're going to pay for gas. And you're going to get multiple discounts because of the company you work at. So it sounds pretty good. But here's the reality. And this is where you have to understand. This is what in 2024, the physician compensation report was providing. So in 2023 on the left and on the vertical side on the right, you have the 2024. So plastic surgery, orthopedics, and cardiology in 2023 were the highest paying. Now, neurosurgery, thoracic surgery, and orthopedic surgery, you can see in the top right, range around above 600,000 a year, right? If you're in one of these, look and scroll down to your right. And what I learned in the SEEK conference this year is that pediatrics or anything related to pediatrics were in high attendance this year. And this probably answers one of my 5 theories of why physicians want to transition. And it's because if you see pediatric endocrinology, pediatric infection disease, and pediatric as a whole, they're at the bottom of that list on the right. And that is around $200,000, $250,000 a year. Now, when you enter the company, you're going to be entering in a certain title and a certain level. So I bring this slide so you can understand that a medical director in a median fashion will get around 230. And if you remember, pediatricians were getting around 230, 250. So if you're able to enter at this salary, this is what you're going to be getting, plus all the benefits that we spoke about. Now, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, neurosurgeon, and you're getting 700, 800,000 a year, well, this is a question you're going to have to ask because you're not going to probably be getting the same amount you're going to be getting there. So that, again, that's balancing your decision. Now, if you want to go by industry, this is also something that I bring forward because if you look at the squares or at the chart here, you can see that and focus on the left on the numbers, right? You're going to see 225,000 being the top, and this is consulting, biotech, pharma, insurance, IT, healthcare and hospitals, and nonprofit. This is by industry, a medical director by industry. If you go by years of experience, well, look at this. You're not going to have experience in the corporate sector. So you're probably going to be coming in, if you're lucky, at a very low number. around this place, right? Between the 220, maybe 220 plus. But look at this, after 15 years, it only goes up to a little bit over 230. So when you go by job title, assistant medical director, top right, is around 150. And if you go to senior medical director, again, it goes between the 250 and 300 a year. Now, the smaller the company, it is highly probable that you're going to get less money. If you have a big company like above 1,000, you're going to get around, guess what? 220, 230 as a starting salary. Again, this is not written in stone. This is what the data says. Obviously, if you're given the chance, you're always welcome to negotiate and land in a place that provides you with satisfaction. And, you're going to get the money that you are needing to get, wanting to get, with, again, everything in balance. Here's a comparison of 2023 and 2024. Now, in 2023, the national average for a chief medical officer, right, was around 232. Well, I thought that 2024 was going to be higher. To my surprise, it was almost $10,000 less, or 4 hours less an hour. So I was really confounded by this number because I thought it was going to be higher, and it wasn't. It was actually lower. I can't answer on why that is. Now, when you go by location in 2023 and 2024, and you go by monthly payment, the same data that we saw on the previous slide is now represented as a monthly rate. So again, around 23,500 in 2023, all of a sudden it went down $1,000. So again, I can't answer on why is that, but it's curious to see in 2025 where this number goes. If you go by regions, in 2023, you had Idaho, West Virginia, Maine, and Wyoming being the highest paying states. And again, when I say highest, it's around the 220. Then in 2024, now you have Seattle, Portland, kind of the West Coast taking that advantage, and they do bring up a 260. So it's about 40,000 higher. So it's also about your willingness to move, because some of these companies will not hire you remotely. They will ask you to move. And if they do that, you're going to have to negotiate a relocation package. So they move you and pay you for that move, which is something that companies are willing to do. So a lot of people say, well, what about Europe? And I bring this because I lived 2 years in Barcelona, and here's my take on this. You can see that the average salary is not as high as what you were looking at for the US. We're talking about 140 plus thousand euros a year. But Europe, with this money, you get more. And when I say more, there's a generally perception that quality of life is better in Europe with less money. It is hard for me to explain that, but I can tell you it's 100% true. I lived 2 years in Barcelona with very little, but it was more than enough. So if you're considering moving to Spain, Germany, Netherlands, Italy, France, or the UK, consider that your salaries are going to be less, but your quality of life is probably going to be really, really good. Now, how have other doctors landed non-clinical positions? So I divide this into 4 types of doctors. The already decided type. So we are seeing a lot of students that go into med school that are wanting to be MDs to join a company. They don't want to practice. They want to do company work. So these are the ones that already decided. They pursue it from the beginning. It's a career start, and it's an ongoing trend. There's also the doctors that do the midlife swap, and that was me. I moved from clinical to corporate in that exact moment where I had finished all my years of training and I was ready to start my practice. And then you have the majority that are the I'm done with practice type. And this is where I have my kind of theories of why are they doing this. Now, the majority, or some of these people in a majority of times, are older, are seasoned, and they're ready for retirement, but they're going to say, you know what? I want to jump on this corporate boat for 5 years, provide my know-how, bring in my knowledge, 5 years, get the benefits, I'm done. You also have people that are burned out or pre-burned out that are looking for these types of opportunities. Then you have people that have had enough with legal issues or lawyers. You have people that have enough with their partners or have had issues with their partners and are done with that. And then you have obviously the low pay. And then you have the recruited type, which is the ones that, are doing their normal day to day. And for whatever reason, they being contacted by an industry saying, we want you to join us. And these are people that may have been KOLs or key opinion leaders for companies. And all of a sudden they are now working for the company. So this is the miscellaneous slide. And this is kind of tips and tricks for you to start doing now. Remember that you will have to switch your thinking from clinical to corporate. And that means changing your resume or your CVs. If you go to your CV now, I'm sure it's more than 20 pages long. And it has all your podium presentations. It has all your awards. It has all your articles. That's gone. You do not need to bring that. You need to make your resume short and sweet, 2 pages maximum. Welcome to corporate, right? And it's going to hurt. I have reviewed so many CVs from my friends that I can feel their pain because I had to go through the same thing of butchering years and years of sacrifice to condense it into 2 pages. But trust me when I tell you, if a recruiter sees your CV longer than 2 pages, it will not go through the first filter. So that is something that has to be done. And, I'm welcome to share mine. I think mine is up on my LinkedIn, but it's a hard thing to do. Now, when you're doing your job searches, do a funnel down approach, start big and start funneling down to where you want to get. In the interviews, be yourself. Accept your handicap and accept that you're willing to learn and hit the ground running. There are a lot of companies that will hire you for your potential instead of your experience. Obviously, with the times that are rolling, you're going to end up in a conundrum saying, I want to join corporate, but I have no experience. And then the company is going to say, but we're looking for somebody with experience. So how do I get experience if I don't get the chance? So that is one of those cycles that keep on going and going, and you just don't know what to do. Don't quit. You will find your opportunity. When you're about to negotiate, we doctors usually are not good at that, but some of us are, but just do it. That's what I call the Nike approach. You're going to have to. Some of us fear that whatever first proposal is given to us is great. But if it's not, and you would like some more, negotiate it, talk about it, lose the fear of not getting the job, enter that negotiation phase before you accept the job. Networking is critical. What you guys are doing now, even virtually listening to me, is part of that. Go to meetings, go to conferences, and social media. When I say social media, it's in red because I want to bring up the importance of LinkedIn. And LinkedIn obviously has evolved, but it has remained as that media platform that is not social, that is actually job oriented or in a way corporately oriented. And fortunately, it has remained that way. And I will tell you this, having an active LinkedIn profile is a plus for you. Now, don't go overboard. Don't start, boring people with posts and stuff. There's a cadence, there's an art to using your LinkedIn profile. But I will tell you that if your LinkedIn profile does not have a picture, or worse than that, has a picture of your dog or your cat and does not look professional, it will not be seen. If you don't have what recruiters are looking for in LinkedIn, you might get cut off in the first filter. So pay attention to LinkedIn. If you're wary, I'm thinking about Nike approach, just do it. And if you need any help with your LinkedIn profile, please look at mine. And if I can help you in any way, I'm glad to do so. People ask me about Do I need a business degree? Do I need an MBA? Well, again, that's up to you. I will tell you it's optional. It adds more than it takes away, but it takes away a lot of money. So I don't know if spending the gazillion amount of dollars in an MBA is actually going to land you a job. But I will tell you that unfortunately, people look at MBAs, and if there are candidates with or without, sometimes they will go for that people would have additional learning credentials. And it doesn't have to be an MBA. It can be a master's in public health. It can be something else that kind of links you more a little bit to the corporate way of thinking. About mentoring or coaching, I highly suggest it. It doesn't hurt to have somebody help you understand the differences between mentoring and coaching. But what you need to bring to the table is a clear focus on your desired outcome. But remember to be flexible, because as my life has shown me, it can change any day of the year. And just remember this: I've been where you are. I have been vulnerable in not knowing where I want to go with what I've done. I had a daughter and I didn't have what I needed to provide her with what I wanted to provide her. Remember, I wanted to be a husband and dad. Well, when that happened, I was in a position where I wasn't where I wanted to be. So when this happened to me and I joined this job, my first job, the first thing that my manager's manager told me from physician to physician was, you are not alone. Whatever you're feeling, I felt it. And this is what I'm telling you. Whatever you're feeling now, I felt it. You are not alone. We are not alone. Seek provides a community to help each other out. And this is why it is so important. There is nothing like Seek outside of Seek. That networking you do by coming to the physical venue or by listening to these presentations, you're taking that one step in getting help from experienced people that have been where you are. So, what are my recommended actions? Have clarity on what truly motivates you. I am currently actually reading a book called Drive by H. Pink, and it is telling you the different approaches about motivation. If you want to try it, go for it. It's very interesting, but it kind of disrupts your thinking of the carrot and stick. So it's very interesting, but try to define what truly motivates you and start pursuing that. The sooner, the better. Again, LinkedIn and CV. You heard me. I'm not going to repeat it. Start looking. Are you going to be willing to move out of state, out of country? Involve your family. When I've had the 2 or 3 job opportunities, the first people I ask are my daughters and my wife. And if they say no, no way, then we have to, redirect. But involve your family in your decisions. Think about your financials. Start contacting recruiters. Seek also provides you with a full pavilion of recruiters that are there to help you and guide you, to grab your CV, to introduce you to this world. There is nothing wrong by having a million interviews, regardless of what the outcome is. I understand that you want the job, but keeping yourself alive in the recruiter world is so, so important. Again, networking. Find a port of entry, foot in the door. It might not be the specific job you're looking for, but once you get in the door of a company and you become corporate, then you start navigating on the different avenues that your life can take. Get good, get creative, be smart. And there's a difference between being intelligent and being smart. Every living thing is intelligent because it has the capacity to learn. But being smart is applying what you learned for your benefit or the benefit of others. So be smart. Take the risk you want to take. I don't know how risk averse you are or how risk friendly you are. There are going to be decisions that are going to put you on the fence. You don't know what to do. Maybe it's going to be a leap of faith. What if? Don't let that bother you. If you have a north, if you have a way you want to go, pursue it, and you're not alone. Remember that. Apply, apply, and apply. Be honest, be you, recognize your handicap. And if you're not familiar with what a SWOT analysis is a matrix 4x4 that allows you to understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So What I do in my exercises from coaching and what I've done with a lot of my friends is that whatever the question you have or whatever job you're looking at, look at the job and just start writing a list of things that this job would provide or could provide to you, good and bad. And then when you have the full list, and don't think about it, just write, just open your mind and just write the list of things. Divide your matrix in four and start categorizing your list into what does this job provide me as a strength, as a weakness, as an opportunity, as a threat. And then you look at the bigger picture of your matrix. And this is going to help you define if that position is good for you. And this is not only for looking for jobs. This SWOT analysis tool can be used for anything in life. And I do want to leave you with a big thank you for listening. But I do want you to understand that we as MDs have this image of not being humble, of being walking on air. Leave that out the door. Ask for feedback. And if somebody is telling you this, it's because it's there. True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. And with that, I thank you, and I'm done. Back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Juan. Now, I have to apologize. After you mentioned that doctors are leaving medicine because they've had too much of lawyers, I am going to ask you a few questions. So hopefully it won't be cross-examination. It'll be friendly.
Sure.
Fantastic talk. Fantastic talk. So I want to talk about licenses and boards. Can you address, you kind of touched on it, I think, a little bit, but maybe explicitly, are for doctors that trained overseas, doctors that haven't completed their training and gotten their board certification and things like that, are there roles in the United States for doctors without a board or even a medical license in the medical device industry?
The answer is yes, and I'm a living example of it. I am not board certified in the US. I tried to get my USMLEs and my testing when I wanted to pursue my medical career in the US as a resident. And those are critical and those are mandated for you to actually join clinical practice. But I never practiced in the US. And this job came to me with that caveat. Obviously, the company did their research to make sure that I was really an MD, but it's not a requirement. Some companies may ask for board certification preferred, but it's not a condition.
Awesome. Thank you. And networking, I totally agree with you. Best way to go in terms of finding a job and things like that. So you mentioned meetings and conferences. So what are the top one or two meetings, conferences, programs in the medical device field that you might recommend somebody interested in this field for both networking and knowledge to maybe check out? Because various little niches and non-clinical endeavors tend to have their own conferences. Does medical devices have anything like that?
Well, that is a very good question. And that is something that I've been trying to look for in my 12 years of doing this. And the true answer, Jim, is that there should be more. There are a lot of conferences that are not specific on devices, but that will allow you to network with people that work in different sectors. There is one that I highly recommend that has a venue both in the US and in Europe, and it's called the World Drug Safety Congress. It is organized by a company called Terrapin. And I have been going to that conference for 3 or 4 years now. And both branches of it, the European and the American one, have been growing in attendance. And don't get fooled by the fact that it has the name drug in it, because it covers drugs, devices, cosmetics, risk assessment, safety, quality. It is a very comprehensive conference. Now, that is growing into including devices. But to answer your specific question, there's also one meeting that's called the American Medical Device Summit, organized by a company called Generis, which also has European and American version. But this is more focused on the details of devices and not more so of opportunities in devices. These are very technical conferences on people that are already working with devices.
Oh, thank you so much. All right, publications. So one way to kind of get the lay of the land, maybe prepare for an interview, see if you would like this or whatnot, and kind of train yourself is to read a trade publication in the field. Are there any trade publications that you would recommend, probably online, maybe print, maybe both, in the field of medical device safety? Anything you could recommend there, doctor?
I don't have something specific to recommend because Jim, to be honest with you, and I think you know me by now, I've been looking in Google for a lot of things. And I've tried to search for venues. I've tried to search for things for me to learn. I want to go to a conference on medical safety. There is none. You look for safety, and all you see is like environmental safety. There is nothing out there that focuses only on the safety of medical input or medical input within safety for a corporation. And for publications, unfortunately, there is not a lot out there. But if anybody kind of goes in and looks for something, they might find what they're looking for. But unfortunately, there should be more publications. There aren't any.
Perfect. And then the last question, I probably already know the answer based on what you're telling me. I assume that there's not a medical society dedicated to, medical directors or medical people that work in the device industry, because a lot of little niches have that. Like there's a medical science liaison society. So I assume, correct, no such society as of today for the medical device doctors.
Well, there is no specific one, but as you say, there are many societies out there that include a lot of people that are working with medical devices. So, for example, there is a medical affairs physician society, right? There's a medical science liaison society. There are some people in those venues that work with devices, but one of those specifically for devices, I'm not aware of one.
Awesome, thank you. Now, job boards. Are you aware of any specific job boards that are for the device industry? Or would you need to go to the individual companies if you're aware?
I am not aware of any specific ones. My suggestion is to contact recruiters that focus on medical devices. And the way of coming about them is to potentially start asking around the recruiter networking if there are anybody that is specific on devices. The majority are going to be for pharma, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to have some knowledge of where to guide you moving that way.
Awesome. Your coaching. What coaching, if any, do you offer for doctors that want to get into a non-clinical career or medical devices more specifically, if any?
Oh, I wish I could offer, coaching, but based on my job, and this is something that I, do in my life, if I can't give you my 100%, I'm not doing it. And I don't have the time to provide people with my 100%, although I'm always open for calls ad hoc for suggestions, advices, guidance. Actually, I'm getting certified right now in a different variant of coaching called Ikigai coaching, which is based on purpose. And again, all of this coaching, I have done it for me. And if I can help others, the more, the better. I generate a win-win. So if anybody needs some coaching or guidance or questions, I am not the right person, but I know that you know, James, because in Seek, you have 4 or 5 excellent coaches that are dedicated to helping physicians transition. And I'm sure you're going to provide that list because I've met them and they are absolutely amazing. And their job is to coach people to transition. My coaching right now is more of on the sideline.
Excellent, thank you. Now, let's talk about resumes and CVs. So, for either an employer or a recruiter, what would you like to see emphasized on a CV that would make somebody look like they could do a job in medical devices? And what would you recommend if for experience that a doctor doesn't have, that if they wanted to position to themselves, maybe they go out and get some, if that makes
Okay,
sense.
so let's start with the elephant in the room, which is AI and machine learning, right? A lot of people, I'm sure, already know that the filtering of the CVs is now being done by AI. And what is done is that they're looking for keywords. And this is no mystery, right? But a lot of people, what they do is that they grab words from the job description and place it in their CV. That way, when the AI machine reads, it's going to compare the amount of hits from your CV and the job description and get you through the next filter. It sounds odd, it sounds weird, but a lot of people are doing that. Now, to answer your question from a human perspective, be honest in your CV and look at other CV in the way that they're structured. Usually there is a paragraph that tells what you do. And then instead of listing it chronologically, you're going to have to list what have been your achievements in your different positions. And within those achievements, there has to be some sort of project that you have led, successes that you have had, people that you have managed, and objectives that you have met. If you don't have this, I'm sure you do, but if you don't have a corporate experience to put that in there, try to focus your learning as an MD in your residency or in your line of work that can fit into that line of thought into writing that resume. Now, I do want to make clear that you can add a title that says publications and then put upon request. Doesn't mean to not acknowledge them. Awards upon request. Podium presentations upon request. What you don't want to have is your 25 publications with their summaries in your CV.
Thank you. Well, quick question. This is a little side one. Maybe it's just my ignorance not being a physician. What's an auditor in the context of what you're discussing in terms of device safety and patient safety and things like that? I know what an auditor is in terms of, like, money.
Yeah. So there are different auditors and different audits. For medical devices, they can audit your device per se and your company on how they go around making the device. They can come in and look at you and determine, all right, what are the documents that you have or your processes in order to do what you do. Then they can audit the different types of people that work around your device, including who is your safety person, what do they do, and then that branches out to their procedures and everything. They can audit your results. When I say results, it's how is your device tracking in the outside world? Show me your post-market surveillance reports. Show me your complaint log. Show me how these complaints were analyzed and reviewed, and how did you determine that the device is safe to continue there? So there are a lot of types of auditing, but everything can be audited in a company. Everything from the facility to your labs, to your documents, to your people, to your processes, anything can be audited. So the reason why I became an auditor is to basically understand what is their mentality and what are they coming in looking for, so I could be ready as much as I can and have my team ready constantly, because audits can be unannounced. And if you don't believe me, I always made this example saying 1st of January, you can have the FDA knocking on your door. And everybody, when I told that, laughed and said, haha, that's not happening. Well, January 2nd, we had somebody knocking on our door. Fortunately, there was somebody in the office. And that's why you have to be audit ready. So the terminology of audit readiness is exactly because of that. You have to constantly be ready for an auditor to walk in your door.
Any advice on specific 1 or 2 interview questions to be ready for that would make you stand out and show that you're knowledgeable and really interested and committed to medical devices if you're a doctor?
Yeah. So if you haven't had experience in the corporate world, they're probably going to ask you, why are you wanting this job? Why are you applying for this job? And this is where honesty has to come through. And that is, what you heard in my presentation. The tip is to be yourself and be straightforward in acknowledging your handicap, but your willingness to learn. Then the second question that I would prep myself for is to be ready for questions regarding experiences you have had that could relate to X or Y. Like, you had a problem, how did you solve it? There was an issue with something that wasn't working, how did you solve it? Those type of questions may come. Then you have the bucket everyday questions. What are you willing to get? What is your salary? Are you willing to move? But conversations right now are happening in this interview. Be yourself, be honest, and be willing to learn. Those are my 3 tips on that end.
Thank you very much. Almost done. I'm sorry, this deposition is going on too long. So it seems to me from what you're saying is that the doctors tend to be hired, which makes sense, in their own therapeutic area. So if you're a, right, if you're a cardiologist,
Lego piece.
That goes and whatnot, you maybe go into a sonography type company or something like that, somebody makes that. Any advice for finding the companies besides Freitas, you just know of them because you're in practice, finding the companies that are active in your own particular therapeutic area?
Yeah, so I got that question when we did their the mentoring in the Seek venue, and what I tell them is, think about what products you use on your day-to-day practice, right? What are the brands of those machines, right? Then look for that brand and look for that company online and see, look, they usually have work with us sections or contact us. Reach out to the companies that you have experience by using their device. And then you can go horizontally and say, all right, what other companies produce the same devices that I use? Because a lot of companies are going to want to be able to potentially understand what are the goods, pros and cons of another device, your competitor, right? So try to be as specific as you can and then broaden your horizons, because you're also an MD. If you are subspecialized in the right-handed thumb, right? Don't forget that to get there, you did orthopedics, you did hand surgery, you did medicine, and all of that plays a role in the potential position you're going to be working with.
All right, the last question is going to be about money, and they'll be quick. You mentioned pension. Is that typically in a device company, defined benefit, defined contribution, like, so defined benefit be a traditional pension, defined contribution be like 401k? What has your experience been when you mentioned
I
pension?
have been very fortunate, Jim, that the 2 companies that I have been working for provide both. But yes, that's like, I mean, I'm telling you, there's a lot of luck in this, right? But I will tell you that 401k will mostly all the time will be provided, but a specific pension plan apart from that, I don't think that is rolling in parallel as a 401k benefits.
All right. Now, one of the things I want to clear up, not clear, but just ask you about is, my understanding is that a significant part of compensation in industry is incentive. And you mentioned, I think, short-term incentive and long-term incentive. I think you said STI and LTI. I saw that correctly. So the figures that you were showing was salary. So to put everything in context, what kind of percentage range they typically quote for medical directors in the device industry, percentage of salary for that bonus incentive compensation?
Correct. So let's split it in what short-term incentive and long-term incentives are. So if you have short-term incentives, that means that if your group or your company meets the performance goal, you're going to get a percentage extra. And that, when you sign your contract, is itemized, right? Because your full compensation package is going to be the benefits, the pension, the salary. And if you get to a certain goal, you're going to be rewarded with an X percentage of that money. And it all depends on what the company is offering. Some companies may offer you a 10%, 15, 20, 25, right? It's all about the negotiation for that short-term incentive. Now, if you have a potential public company, they may also offer stocks as long-term incentives, right? And what long-term incentives mean is that they will give you the money, not immediately, but in the long term. So you're hired today and you start getting those long-term incentives, but they will vest in around 3 or 4 years, right? So that means that if you want that money, you're going to have to get to those 3 years in order for the first year to vest. And then it goes on and on and on. So that is all part of your negotiation with the company and asking about this. And if you're transferring from one to another, making sure that everything is clear. Now, I do want to say this. We are not very good in the economical proportion of things as MDs. Don't be afraid to ask 1,000 questions. I know I did, because I was just honest. I don't know. What do you mean about this? What do you mean about that? When I changed jobs, it was different because I had 10 years of experience with one company and I kind of understood. But if it's your first time joining a company, don't pretend you know everything, because by pretending, you may be losing on some sort of the negotiation package that you're probably going to be getting.
And the last question, I promise, is it fair to say that, although there may be some discrepancies in pay, especially if you're a much higher paying specialty like neurosurgery when you go into industry, that things also look a little bit or a lot more favorable when you think about the pay per hour, because the hours are so much reduced in industry than they are in clinical medicine? Is that fair to say?
I think it's going to be very hard to work on an hourly rate for a physician that joins a company.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, but in general, if you think about it, like, you're getting this much money, you're getting less, but you're working a lot less too, in terms of hours.
Well, I think that's a good question, because I think that, let's think about it this way. The amount of work is a lot, but it's condensed in less amount of hours. So the intensity of work is higher, but you're not working nights or weekends.
Schedule
See if I can
control.
make.
Yeah.
So I have days, Jim, where I have a team in Germany. I usually wake up at 6 a.m. and I grab my phone and I start answering the emails that are already in my inbox. There are usually 20, 25, right? From 6 to 7 a.m. Then I get up, drink my coffee, help the kids go to school. And then about 8 a.m., I'm either in the office or I'm working in my home office. And I go nonstop from 8 to 5, 5:30, 6. And there's some days that you have back to back to back to back to back. There's some days that you may have a gap in the morning where you technically use it to catch up with more stuff. So it's a tricky question, but it's about putting those things together and understanding that even though in your routine as an orthopedic surgeon, you may have surgery day, Monday and Tuesday, then you have Wednesday to do investigation, then you have Thursday and Friday to do your clinic, right? Then on Saturday, you come in to sign the paperwork for people to leave that you operated on Monday. It all balances out, but I think it's more of the condensation of the volume of work and the spreading of it in different hours of the day.
I kept you overtime. I have to apologize. And I also have to
No. It's perfect. I love doing this.
You're a great evangelist. I get to practice my Spanish accent very poorly. Thank you so much for coming back. Thank you. Juan, Dr. Daca.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Kelly. It's always a pleasure. And again, if everybody needs me, you know where to find me. LinkedIn.